Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
Delighted to introduce our guest for this segment. His name is Michael Newton. He is, the founder of a concept that has just taken off, that is A Day on the Green. Mick, welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show.
Oh, good day. How are you going, Neil? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much. Now, we should tell the folks, if they're wondering why Rob is so quiet, we're pre-recording this on Friday, but that's okay. Rob couldn't make it for the conversation.
That's fine with me.
Yeah. But Rob will be listening, so we better say hello to Rob.
Rob.
So, we are, part of the reason we're having you on this week is next Saturday, a week from today, we have the 500th episode, if you will, of A Day on the Green. Where did it start?
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? Like it seems like it's happened so quickly, but we were certainly no overnight sensation. You know, we did our first show back in 2001, and here we are 21 years later with 500 shows down. It's amazing.
Who was on the first bill? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. It was we did a show down on the Mornington Peninsula with James Morrison, Renee Gayer, and Stephen Cummings, and we got 1,700 people. And we made money, and we thought that was a good result.
Yeah. Yes, it would have been taking a deep breath, I would have thought. 3 really well-known names. How do you choose them to start off with? Were they just available, or how did you choose those for the first 3?
The whole concept of A Day on the Green was, just appealing to a slightly older demographic who are music fans, and I was an agent at the time, for rock and roll bands and working at Premier Artists, and some of my artists were a little bit old to get on the big day out, and there was no sort of home for them on a festival type situation. There were some one-off shows here and there, and probably Byron Bay Blues Fest. So I kind of thought there was just something missing, and took a leaf out of Lewin Estates' book down in Margaret River, who do, opera and that's jazz in their winery, and just thought if you put contemporary artists on in a winery, it might go okay, and but the key was to do multiple bills or multiple acts, and then we thought, well, let's start with that lineup and see how we go, and we got 3AW to present it, and we had a little sponsor, and it all worked really well, and it was just such a great atmosphere. And then we did a show. That was the first year, and then the second year we did a show up in Bendigo and one up in the Hunter Valley. They were both with Paul Kelly and James Rain. I think Renee might have been on that too. And then and we made money on those, and it was like, well, there's something in this idea. And then we just went for it from there, and just started, getting more wineries, talking to artists about it, and having a background as an agent, I knew how to talk to the bands about and deliver what they needed, and it just went on from there. And then Michael Gudinski became a partner, and the first international tour we did was Jackson Browne. I think we did 5 wineries on that show. That was probably 2005 or 2004, and just kept going.
Well, we should also say g'day to Renee, because she's a Geelong girl, I'm told, and therefore she's probably listening to the two. Why wouldn't she be?
she's great, Renee.
Yeah,
what an artist.
Yes, absolutely. We're hoping to have her on the show in next year, because we're obviously getting towards Christmas now. So the concept obviously also needs wineries to be involved, because you can't have A Day on the Green at a winery without wineries being involved. How did you choose those?
Yeah. Well, that was a thing. We thought, there was like, where do we do the shows? And it was like, a park, or, some kind of, reserve. But it's like, you can go and, you can go and step in dog shit. You can go and kick the football there, and, you can go and do whatever you, in a public park. But the winery idea was a lot more romantic or aspirational, also out of town. So the appeal was, with a Day in the Green, was to do regional shows, so people could, spend a weekend out, or get a bus out, and be in a beautiful spot and sit around with family and friends and be able to have a drink and something to eat, bring a picnic and just, have the kind of different atmosphere and provide a different platform for the artists that I used to represent as an agent to perform that hadn't previously been around. And it just got momentum so quickly. There were some years there some years where we did, 40 to 45 shows a summer. And so that's a lot of shows, and it's probably too many. And at the moment, we're in a sweet spot where it's usually around 24 or something like that. But obviously, it's all around Australia, sometimes New Zealand, and it seems to be it's quite an established brand now, and promoters and artists trust us. I can talk to someone about Robbie Williams or Elton John or Sting or Rod Stewart, like we've got coming up, and they're entrusting me with their artists, and I know we can pull off a great show, and so do they. So it's really humbling, and I'm very grateful to all my staff and all the people involved over the years that we've got to that level.
And with due respect to Renee and to James and to Stephen, it's a big jump, isn't it, to the Fleetwood Macs and the Elton Johns and the Rod Stewarts of the world. I guess more than anything else, that's a testament to your brand, but also, I guess, a testament to the quality of the venues that these are held at.
Yeah, I mean, you really need to be able to service, like when I go and look at a site now, I can see like, okay, the stage would be here, this is where the people would go, how would they get into the venue? But at all our venues now, we have, hard base roads going into the car park. We have, hard stands for all the work areas where the bars and toilets are. The stage and the backstage area is all hard base and gravel. So it's quite a commitment from the winery to get what is essentially just a paddock up to a world-class concert site. And in the case of Geelong, we sell over 20,000 tickets to that venue now, and it's quite a challenge to get 20,000 people into what was a paddock in good time and out in good time, and get them to enjoy the actual show while it's on and have the artist enjoy it as well. So it's I guess I've just grown up with the shows very organically, from doing the small shows, for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people in the first few years to, then extending it up to, 8 and 10s and now, it's our smallest venue is probably 12,000 and the biggest ones at Geelong, which is over 20.
Yeah, I guess the only concern is, as I'm sitting here looking out the window of my studio at home in Geelong West, I think it's fair to say it looks a little bit overcast. Let's call it that. It sounds much nicer than it's chucking rain down. That's got to be a bit of a challenge for you.
Look, weather's always, you're putting on outdoor shows with a lot of people, so weather's one of the biggest challenges. We just did 2 shows with Crowded House last weekend up in southeast Queensland at Suramay Wines, and we had 26,000 people over 2 nights, and it could have been wet, but as it turned out, it was perfect and 25 degrees and dry, and we had it couldn't have got any better. Like we were saying on the nights, it couldn't get much better than this, because it was just, the bands are on fire, the audience loved it, the weather was beautiful. And then we've had shows up there like with Elton John where it's rained, and it's challenging, and it puts a different, atmosphere, into the show. But they're still seeing a world-class act outside, and they were still amazing shows. But it certainly provides a few challenges when it's wet, yeah.
Have you cancelled one yet because it's been too wet?
Yeah, we're probably out of the 500. I know we've cancelled 2 because of fires.
Right.
One we had Simply Red on that Black Saturday in the Yarra Valley.
Yep.
So that was like where it was all happening, and that was awful. That was just a horrible day. And then Cold Chisel up at Albury in those fires a couple of years ago.
Yep.
You know, when it was really smoky and no one could breathe. Remember that?
Yeah, I do. It'd be unusual for
Yeah,
Cold Chisel
so
to perform in a smoky environment, I would have thought.
Oh no, but it was like you couldn't from the stage. You couldn't hardly see the front of house, which is only 40 meters away.
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty amazing.
And my production and site guys were saying, "Oh, it's really bad. You can't breathe. It's like I don't know how we're going to do the show." And I'm in my head. I'm in Melbourne. I'm thinking, "Oh, it can't be that bad." Anyway, so I take it upon myself to go up the couple of days before, and I get there and I just said to the guys, how are you actually working? Like, this is ridiculous. You shouldn't even be working. Anyway, we had to cancel that show. And then with rain, I reckon we've probably cancelled 8, 10 maybe.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
And if it is Barnsley, you know, and it's in Sydney, then you go, well, sorry, Barnsley, don't come up the highway. If you've got Fleetwood Mac and everything they bring with them, that's kind of awkward, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really big call to make that call, and what you've got to do, and how we do this, is we have like what's called an emergency control room, an ECO, I think it's called, or EOC or something. But where we'll all be in a room together. There'll be all the different stakeholders, police, ourselves, a safety officer, representative of the artist, and we'll make a group decision. And then of course there will be an insurance assessor in the room as well, who actually signs off on the whole thing as also. So because, you know, some of the budgets with the bands we work with, the show budgets are just enormous, and it'd sink us if we didn't have insurance and we had to cancel a show. You know what
absolutely.
I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a really tough day in the office when that's going down. But you know, over the years I've just learned that it's just part of running outdoor shows, and it's a part of doing business in the space that we work.
I guess arguably the most notable example of a concert that went ahead when it probably shouldn't have was the one that ABBA did. Was it the Sydney Cricket Ground in about 1976, 77 when they were here? And I think one of the girls slipped over on stage and all sorts of stuff. But
oh, really?
Yeah. Of course, you and I are far too young for that. Obviously, in the 70s.
I was 10. Yeah.
I wasn't 10. But and you know, the question was going to be about, you know, there's a bit of electricity up there on the stage, and if, you know, there's a deluge of water hits the stage, Frida and Agneta end up with spiky hair.
Yeah, you can't have that. I remember we did a show in over in the Swan Valley, and it was a really hot day, and there was a bit of electricity around, but it seemed to be, you know, not coming near the venue, and I ended up having to walk onto the stage while the Pretenders were playing and tap Chrissy, literally tap Chrissy Hine on the shoulder and say, "Hey, we got to get off," and explain to the audience what was happening. And it was tough. But you know, these are the things you have to do.
Yeah, I guess so. And you know, the trade-off, I guess, you know, I've been to, you know, all of the big stadiums around the world, Festival Hall, Dallas Brooks, you know, those ones. The advantage of being in there is obviously the weather's not an issue, but you take somewhere like Costa Hall in Geelong, a great little venue that holds, I don't know, 800, 900 people. There's a constraint in terms of the constraint of the number of people that can be there. Plus, if you happen to be the poor sod that's halfway along the row and you want to go to the loo, you know, excuse me. Whereas I guess in a venue like Mount Dunedin, where you've got 20,000 people can get up and walk around, they can dance if they want to really easily. It's not causing any grief to anyone. I guess that's the trade-off, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, that's it. And when it's a nice night and the bands are on fire, like I was saying with the shows up in Southeast Queensland last week, and I'm sure it's going to happen next week with Crowded House at Geelong. You know, when you've got such a good lineup and such a good atmosphere, you know, it's hard to beat. Yeah, it's hard to beat as a concert experience, and we don't chintz on production and staging and screens and that kind of stuff. Like, you know, we have delay towers, we have delay screens, even, you know, halfway up the venue, so that people at the back should be able to hear. So it's just something that, like I said, we've kind of grown up with. You know, the smaller shows, then the bigger shows, and then, you know, more expense and, you know, but more tickets and bigger acts and all of it, you know. So it's just been a learning process the whole way along for me. Well, it's something that I kind of take for granted now and shouldn't. because it's amazing how far we've come.
Yeah, and when the media release came out that this is the 500th show, I thought, and it was in Geelong, I thought, hey, this is an opportunity to chat about something that has really become part of the Australian vernacular, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit like the Boxing Day Test. It's not, obviously a different game, but it's one of those things that's now on the calendar, and people go, yeah, Day on the Green, I know what that is, and that's obviously a testament to the brand.
Oh, look, there was last year an advertising agency in Sydney. Not at our behest, but they did a survey of the music brands that were well known in Australia, and we were number 2, and I can't remember. It could have been, I don't know who was number 1, maybe Byron Bay Blues or something. But we were a really highly recognisable brand for that survey, and that was across a wide audience as well. So that was really pleasing.
It might have been the Two Blokes Chatting radio show that slotted in at number 1. I can't be certain.
Could have been that. I don't think it was Blues. It was something. I can't remember what it was.
It was Blokes. That's what it was.
It could have been Splendour.
So let's just focus on a couple of performances, and I'm then going to ask you the impossible question. Coming up next Saturday night, that's the 19th of, what are we up to, November, at Mount Dunedin. I checked just before we had this conversation. There are still some limited tickets available.
There's still some tickets available, which is really pleasing. Like I think we've sold about 17,000 tickets. So it's going to be an incredible show. But yeah, you'll still be able to get tickets.
Yep. So it's Crowded House are the headline act, but who else is on the bill?
So Boy and Bear are in the middle spot, and I saw them play up at Surimay Wines last Saturday with Crowded House, and they are sounding so good. Like, talk about underrated band. Really good. And then we have the Waifs playing before Boy and Bear. Mm-hmm. And before the Waifs, there's a little piece from northern Greece, an island off northern Greece, in fact, where Neil Finn has a holiday home. Mm-hmm. And he saw these guys playing in a bar and said, why don't you come down to Australia and play with us?
Yep.
So they said, okay. A couple of them didn't have passports. So they've come down and they open the show, and they're great. And Neil gets them up during the Crowded House encore, and it's just absolutely sublime.
And what are they called? Sorry, I missed them.
Mastrato.
Okay, Maistrato.
Trato, yeah, Mastrato.
Okay,
yeah.
Excellent.
And one of the guys in the band is the mayor of the island. Turns out.
So, I don't know what's going on while he's down here playing music. Who's running the show? But that's okay. Now the second.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. It was just such a great little touch added so much to the show.
Now, the second question I was going to ask you is, we heard on the grapevine, and in fact it was announced yesterday, Friday, that you've got a couple of superstars coming to town. Talk us through that one and when they're going to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. So, Rod Stewart, who we had confirmed for Mount Dunedin and a few other shows a couple of years ago, then COVID came, so we postponed it. And then COVID came again, so we actually had to cancel it fully, but now Rod's back. It's going to be March 18 next year, and the bonus that everyone gets that they didn't have on the first lot of Rod dates is that Cyndi Lauper is going to be special guest. So Rod Stewart and Cyndi Lauper, it's just hit after hit after hit after hit, and then another hit. Just an insane lineup, and John Stevens is going to be playing with them as well. So I think it's going to be an enormous show, and just going on the feedback that we're getting from the announcement, it's going to be very, very strong. Goes on sale next week.
And John Stevens, it would have been a long time since John Stevens was number 3 on the bill, I would have thought.
Yeah, isn't it? We had him playing with Rod the first time around.
Yep.
And then Cindy's on board now, but we thought, well, it's an expensive artist lineup, but let's give people even more value for money and keep John in there. And yes, it's super exciting.
Outstanding. Well, before I ask you the impossible question, we should tell people if they want to know more about tickets are available from Ticketmaster. But if you want to know about upcoming shows, because I know Sting's coming, the Killers are coming, every man in fact, the Two Blokes Chatting may in fact pop up as the MCs on one or two of those shows. I can't confirm that just yet. The
interesting.
the website is adayonthegreen.com.au. Adayonthegreen.com.au. Everything is there.
Yeah. Yeah, everything's there, and you can join there as a Day on the Green member and have access to the pre-sale. So we do a pre-sale for our members before it goes on sale to the general public. So the on-sale to the general public is next Thursday for Rod, but the pre-sale to our members will go on Tuesday. So you'll be assured of getting a ticket.
Okay, here is your impossible question. Ready for it?
I think I know what's going to be.
Which has been your favourite of the 500?
Yeah, I think the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Geelong would be number one.
And I love the way you play to the audience too. Well played on that, because if this was a Newcastle radio station, you'd be talking about a Hunter Valley act, but well done. No, that was good.
Oh, they were incredible. I'd have to say Leonard Cohen, every show that we did with Leonard was just amazing. Just so, just incredible to experience. And I guess Robbie and Elton have both been really fun shows too. But then there's been so many good local lineups that we've done as well. So it's hard to put a finger on it really. But if I had to answer, that'd be the top three.
And congratulations on not saying. It's like asking me who my favourite child is.
Yeah. No, I've got no problem with that.
Mick Newton, founder of Day on the Green, thank you so much for taking time out of what is an insanely busy time at the moment, particularly given the announcement you made yesterday. It's terrific to have a chat to you. Congratulations on what you've achieved. We're going to go with one of your upcoming artists with the song that we are leaving you with, folks. It is a bit of Rod Stewart. He's catching a downtown train.
Right.
Dayonthegreen.com.au. Thanks, Mick Newton.
Rock on, Neil.